Hello folks, I'm Ronald Mehta and welcome back to Digiate.com. We are your digital aid and we provide free courses on the subject of business and marketing. This video takes a brief stab on the topic of sales process, along with live examples and case studies. Let's start with the first one.
In this video, we are going to cover the topic on process of selling. Let's start with the introduction. Apart from the product and sales organization, selling skills, tactics, and strategies are also important for the success in selling and sales management. Various activities performed by the salespeople are grouped into non-selling and selling activities. Many steps in the selling process constitute selling activities. Preparation of salesperson, collecting payments, collecting information, traveling, etc. are part of non-selling activities. Now let's look at the process of selling, with the first step being opening the sales call. Sometimes the saying, "the first impression is the last impression," stands to be appropriate. Therefore, a salesperson introduction of himself is very crucial and affects the rest of the proceedings. The main objective is to get closer to the emotions and the wavelength of the prospect, meaning the customer, since this is not just a rapport building stage for present calls but also for future ones. The product and the company should be introduced with the same spirit. Next, sales proposition. Sales proposition is made on the basis of quality, product, price, delivery package, and payment. Two very important functions are performed at this stage by the salesperson. First, the need level of the buyer is understood, and second, the salesperson probes the buyer to discover his inner thought. Probing, a psychological tool, seeks answers to the following questions. First, what is the buyer's real reaction to the sales proposal as compared to his verbal reaction? Second, what does the prospect understand about the market? And third, what are the prospect's attitude towards the competitor's package? In order to succeed in probing, the salesperson himself or herself has to be well informed. Moving to the third stage, presentation. Presentation is crucial in supplementing or strengthening the sales proposal. Details of the proposal are provided by it. Establishing the product and sales package is a main objective of a presentation. This involves studying the competitor's level, the market structure, uniqueness, or distinctiveness of the sales proposal. A presentation can be a simple conversation or discussion. Moving further, depending upon the volume of anticipated sale, nature of the product, and whether the prospect is an individual or group of executives, presentations can also have completely structured audiovisuals. Group presentations are more elaborate and structured. Explanations are provided to clarify queries or points during a presentation. Whenever applicable or necessary, product demonstrations are provided. The first step towards stimulating a customer is a sales presentation. Next in line, motivating the customer. Two separate actions are called in order to stimulate or motivate a customer. First, customers' objections are managed, and second, an urgency or a climate for sale is created. More information needs to be provided by salesperson about the product, competing brands, etc. in order to manage any resistance to a sale or objection. In more detailed terms, this involves problem-solving skills, a more positive approach, and a persuasive market intelligence backup. In the sales process, this is the most challenging step. The next step, as stated earlier, creating urgency is about helping the customer decide on buying the product immediately. The following two elements constitute urgency. First, the reason for doing business immediately, and second, the reward for doing business immediately. Moving on to the last stage of closing the sale. This is the pinnacle of the sales process. The salesperson finalizes the sale at this stage and receives the commitment of the buyer. The logical conclusion of a sales call must be its closing. The salesperson should be aware of when to strike, that is, close the sale. Timing is very important. Things shouldn't be postponed to the next day. And while closing a sale, every salesperson goes through the majority of these 5 steps. Thus, to conclude, the process of selling entails first, opening the sales call, second, sales proposition, third, presentation, fourth, motivating the customer, and fifth, closing the sale. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on process of selling. These are some of the sources and links referred to for the content in the video. In this video, we are going to cover the topic on steps in selling process. Let's look at the steps briefly. First, prospecting and qualifying. Second, preparation/pre-approach. Third, approach. Fourth, presentation. Next, overcoming objections. Sixth, closing the sale. And finally, follow-up. Now let's look at each one of them in detail, starting with prospecting and qualifying. A salesperson does complete research before planning any sale. Research is essential to recognize the people or companies who could potentially be intrigued by the product. This step is a foundational step for the rest of the sales process. This step is called prospecting. A lead is a potential buyer. And a qualified lead who is willing, ready, and able to buy the product is a prospect. Moving on to step 2, pre-approach. In this step, a salesman's job is to find out the needs, preferences, behavior, problems, etc. of the prospect. There are chances that according to the particular requirements of a customer, the product may need to be altered. After attaining sufficient information about the customer's wishes, a salesman must develop his plan of sales interview or presentation. It is crucial that the sales presentation should be in alignment with the needs of the prospect. The presentation should enable the salesman to take care of the prospect smoothly through the entire buying process during the sales talk. Third, approach. The next step, when the salesman comes in contact with the prospect face to face with the prospect, is called approach. Approach has 2 parts, getting an interview and the first contact. For this, he or she can make use of telephone, introduction or reference of another customer and his or her business card. The salesman should have the ability to catch the attention of the prospect and get them interested in the product. It's incredibly crucial to avoid being dismissed before the salesman can present the product. Moving on, 3 standard methods of approach are: first, the premium approach, wherein a salesman presents the potential client with a gift at the very beginning of the interaction. Next, the question approach. In order to get the prospect interested, the salesman should ask a question. And third, the product approach. The prospect is given a free trial or a sample of the product so that they can evaluate and review the service. Moving on to step 4, which is presentation. The buying process of the customer is very closely related to the sales presentation. The interest of a prospect can be increased through smart and lively sales talk with the proper demonstration by the salesman. Many a times, a sales demonstration takes place of visual aids. This is quite a common phenomenon for capital goods or machineries. It is important that the salesman find out customers' reaction after correctly explaining the product features and anticipated benefits. The customer should be satisfied by the end of the presentation. Moving on to step 5, objections. The prospect could at any stage of the sales interview try to delay or resist a purchase. An objection must be taken as a hint of how the mind of the prospect is operating. An intelligent salesman would welcome an objection, understand it correctly, and avoid it tactfully without bickering with the customer. Moving on to step 6, close. The act of getting consent of the prospect to buy the product is called the close. All the efforts that a salesman takes come together and present it as the pinnacle of the entire sales process. It is vital for a salesman to be alert and identify the right moment to close the deal. The right moment can be identified by watching every sign of the prospect and their will to buy and then applying the close. Unless and until the product is in the hands of a happy customer, the sale is never considered complete. Depending on the kind of business, a salesman might try one of these closing strategies. First, extra inducement close. In order to seal the deal, the salesman offers something extra to attract them. For example, a discount or a free month of service. Next, urgency. A feeling of urgency is produced by stating that the time is of the essence. For instance, the price will be going up after this month, or we have only 6 spots left. And finally, step 7, the follow-up. Follow-up is the contact with the customer after a sale is obtained. After obtaining the order, the salesman arranges for dispatch and delivery, facilitate grant of credit, reassure the customer that it's a wise purchase decision, and minimize dissatisfaction if there is any. In order to maintain the goodwill, salesmen should get in touch with the customer. The follow-up is a crucial part that makes sure that the customer is satisfied and that the customer can be retained. It can also be used as a prospect for new customers. Now moving on to an example of sales process, B2B sales. An example for wherein we will talk about the sales process for Boeing and Airbus, which are aircraft manufacturers. Boeing or Airbus can be approached by a passenger airline company, the customer in this case, with a set of requirements and ask them to provide specific quotes. After starting a bidding war for the newly launched aircraft by Boeing or Airbus, whichever airline offers the best deal wins. Based on what aircraft have been procured in the past, Boeing or Airbus can offer the airline a reasonable proposition that could be interesting to them. For instance, Aircraft Interiors Expo in Hamburg, Germany is the world's biggest event. It is committed to the aircraft interiors industry, connectivity, in-flight entertainment, and passenger services. This is where Airbus showcased its latest cabin innovations in 2019. Airbus displayed the mock-ups for the latest, most advanced, full-scale airspace cabin, the A320. Moving further, it depicted how the aircraft offers the best cabin experience in any small single-aisle aircraft. The day and night premium concept was also featured for the A350 XWB. There was also a mock-up of A320 upgrade services. The highlight of all was that the virtual reality guests let visitors experience all aircraft cabins. And finally, did you know, sometimes a sales presentation by Boeing and Airbus can stretch up to 3 to 5 days. For sales pitches and demonstration, a team on behalf of the airlines, which are the prospective customers, are flown down to Boeing or Airbus's manufacturing location. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on steps in selling process. These are some of the sources and links referred to for the content in the video. In this video, we are going to cover the topic on theories of selling. There are 3 theories of selling. First, stimulus response theory. Second, product orientation theory. And third, need satisfaction theory. Let's look at each one of them briefly, starting with stimulus response theory. Please note, all the theories of selling are basically behavioral theories. Let's move on to stimulus response theory. According to stimulus response theory, the buyer will respond in the way the salesperson wants him to. That is, to purchase the product if the salesperson uses the correct stimuli in the right strength or dose. Most common stimuli used by salespeople are: first, personality projection, as in the physical appearance of the salesperson, the skills, mannerisms, etc. Next, the product campaign. The company's product is presented as leading or with the price without overdoing it. Third stimuli, competitor killing. The competitor's brands and products are skillfully buried by the salesperson. Fourth, price concession. To provide price concession or price discounts on purchases. And fifth, preferential treatment to selected customers. Customers that buy in large volumes, make timely payments, or show loyalty to the company is given special treatment. There are some drawbacks of the stimulus response theory. First, the needs of the prospect are not understood by the salesperson by asking questions and listening. And second, the prospect might lose interest in buying a product since the salesperson has to provide the prospect with all the information about the product like its benefits and features which not be useful to the prospect. The example of a brand with an amazing stimulus response theory is Apple. Apple is known to dominate the iconic sensory experience it provides that projects a clean image to customers inside the store. The packaging is elegant and compact, and the color is sleek, minimal white. The design is simple and speaks more loudly in the world of clutter. So this is more like pushing the superiority of the product to the customer. Facts: Apple contracts a designer whose entire job is to create innovative packaging. The hired designer builds and tests countless versions of the box shape, angle, and tapes. The firm also has a designer dedicated to just opening hundreds of model boxes, as it isn't just about aesthetics. It's about how easy it was for customers to open, identify the component parts, and to start using it. In his book, Inside Apple, Adam Lashinsky says, to fully grasp how seriously Apple executives sweat the small stuff, consider this. For months, a packaging designer was holed up in this room performing the most mundane task of opening boxes. Moving on to the next theory of selling, that is the product orientation theory. In this theory, it is assumed that the buyer is unaware of recent technological developments and it is on the salesperson to make the buyer aware. In doing so, the salesperson would be able to induce the buyer into using or buying his or her product. In product orientation theory, the salesperson relies on explanations and presentations instead of the more aggressive approach taken in the stimulus response theory. Sometimes, subtle psychological pressure can also be applied by the salesperson. This selling approach is most commonly used for computers, pharmaceutical products, mobiles, etc. Following are the limitations of the product orientation theory. First, complex market. Second, customers are now aware of substitutes. And third, increase in competition. The example in this case is of Sony, of how it's demonstrated to the customers the advantages of buying their waterproof Walkman. Sony hired Auckland-based advertising agency named Draft FCB to campaign for their new Walkman Sports MP3 player. It was waterproof and all-in-one device with a 4 GB internal memory. A vending machine was repurposed into some kind of sales portal to showcase the product's waterproof feature. It was meant to attract athletes looking for a music player that was waterproof. The bottled Walkman was sold in gyms all over New Zealand from vending machines right next to neon blue Gatorade bottles. The idea was to place the product in places where the target audience hung out in reality instead of in stores. Therefore, this particular example is the perfect demonstration of a product orientation theory explaining the waterproof feature of Sony Walkman. Next, and the final theory is need satisfaction theory. According to this theory, the selling process leads to a mutual satisfaction between the buyer and the seller. Unlike the other theories mentioned, this theory is based on a win-win assumption. In this theory, before proposing a sale, the needs and expectation of a prospect must be ascertained by the salesperson. The buyer's points and objections, if any, must be carefully noted down by the salesperson. You must then answer the questions to satisfy the buyer. Moving forward, this theory has a high level of sales effectiveness. The relationships that lead to a satisfied and happy customer can be predicted by this theory. The importance of developing a professional partnership between the seller and buyer is highlighted in this approach. Many feel that the seller and buyer relationship can yield profits to the company only through this. Please note, the three discussed theories on selling are not interdependent to each other. In reality, all three theories are used in a blend by salespeople many a time to successfully close a sale. Moving on to the example of need satisfaction theory, in this case is Tesla. I'm sure most of you knows that customers can customize their Tesla cars. Tesla practices direct sales, unlike other manufacturers that sell through franchise dealerships. Tesla has formed a global network of company-owned showrooms and studios that are mostly located in famous urban centers around the world. Tesla has an advantage in the speed of its product development as it owns its sales channels and also enhances customer buying experience. As a result, their showroom have no clash of interest. Tesla houses about 429 locations across the globe at the end of Q4 2019, having showrooms, service plus centers, and service facilities. The brand also makes wholesome use of internet sales where buyers can customize and purchase a Tesla online. That is, taking care of the needs of the customer. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on theories of selling. These are some of the sources and links referred to for the content in the video. In this video, we are going to cover the topic on national selling versus international selling. Let's start with the differentiation. Let's begin with definition. National selling. The sale of services and products within the regional boundaries of a country or a nation is called national selling. For example, sale of products within India. Domestic selling is another name for national selling. On the other hand, international selling is the sale of services or products outside the geographical boundaries of a country or nation. It caters to the global market. Next, market intelligence. Apart from data reliability being high, data accessibility is easy in national selling. Whereas, the data reliability is low while at the same time the data accessibility is difficult in the international markets. Moving on, political legal system. In national selling, the company is well aware of its stable political and legal system. Whereas, in international selling, the stability of political and legal system is not guaranteed and in turn affects the company's performance. Next, logistics. In a national market, it is easier to make a product available to its buyers at the right time and the right place. Whereas, various modes of transports are required for the transportation or logistics of a product to international markets. Example, ship, transport, air transport, etc. Hence, the complexity, cost and time required are higher in international selling. Next, level of competition. Similar products are offered by fewer competitors in the national markets, whereas in international selling, the number of competitors might be higher. Next comes the risk factor. Since the market condition and business environment is familiar, the risk is low in national selling. Whereas in international selling, the market condition and business environment is uncertain and unknown, which makes the risk higher. Next, currency. The sale and purchase require a single currency in national selling, whereas in international selling, the exchange rate variations, or I would say fluctuations of international currencies affect sales. And finally, international laws. Domestic laws that are familiar and easier to follow for business and sales in national selling. Whereas in international selling, businesses and sales are affected by international laws of organizations like the World Trade Organization, trade treaties between host and home country, and trade blocs like EU, as in European Union. Now moving on to an example of Under Armour's national versus international selling. As stated by the graphs, in 2019, revenue in Under Armour's North American region decreased $76.9 million to reach $3.6 billion. In 2018, this amount was $3.7 billion. The rationale behind the decrease is that off-price sales in the wholesale channel fell. There was also a decrease in unit sales in the channel that sold directly to customers. A part of this was offset by favorable impacts of returns in the wholesale channel. It was driven roughly by $33.1 million of specific customer returns that were less than the previously established reserves. In 2019, total revenue in Under Armour's EMEA operating segment increased by $31.1 million to reach $621.1 million. Moving forward, in 2018, the same number was $591.1 million. Therefore, that increase. This was driven by the increased wholesale returns and sales made in channels that sell directly to customers. In 2019, total revenue in the Asia Pacific operating division went up to $636.3 million, an increase of $78.9 million. Thus, the number in 2018 was $557.4 million. The main reason was the increase in the number of units sold in the direct-to-customer and wholesale channels. Moving on to Amazon. Amazon's North America net sale witnessed a growth from $117 billion to $160 billion in 2020. Likewise, in the international market as well, net sales increased from $50.9 billion to $66.9 billion in 2020. As far as Amazon Web Services are concerned, net sales increased from $25.0 billion to $32.6 billion in 2020, thus witnessing a rise in every segment. The next and the final example is Lego sales by region. Lego itself witnessed an increase in their sales from 2018 to 2019, roughly about 3 billion Danish krone. As far as sales of goods per region is concerned, the maximum sales can be attributed to the EMEA region, that is Europe, Middle East and Africa, which was about 17.08 billion Danish krone. At the same time, America has also witnessed an increase from 13.7 billion Danish krone to 14.3 billion Danish krone. Moving on to Lego's China expansion. Lego's growth in China has increased to 2 digits because of its brand and retail presence. This will continue in this year because Lego wants to have more than 220 stores in around 40 urban centers by the end of 2020. Lego wants to work on its e-commerce presence on popular platforms such as Tmall and JD.com. It also wants to continue working with Tencent and come up with an innovative games and digital content. So that's it, folks. This brings an end to the topic on national selling versus international selling. These are some of the sources and links referred to for the content in the video. In this video, we are going to cover the topic on organizational selling versus consumer selling. Let's start with the differentiation. Definition. The sale of services or products from one business entity to another is called organizational selling, whereas the sale of services and products from one business entity to the final customer is called consumer selling. In organizational selling, the number of buyers is small. For example, 89% of the goods are purchased by 10 to 15 buyers. But in case of consumer selling, number of buyers is larger. Millions of consumers buy FMCG products. The nature of relationship. The buyers and sellers have a stable and long-term relationship in organizational selling, whereas in consumer selling, most relationships formed are for short term. Next, the aspect of decision making. In organizational selling, different levels of managers are required for the decision making process. It takes a long time. Whereas in consumer selling, friends and families may influence the decision making process. It takes a shorter period of time. Next, buying decision. In organizational selling, the buying decisions are made by knowledgeable and professionally trained people. Strict quality checks are conducted by them. Whereas in consumer selling, the buyers might not have complete knowledge of ingredients, components, or products. The decisions are made on the basis of brand value and the perception of quality. Moving on to negotiation. In organizational selling, a series of negotiations are conducted. In all aspects like delivery schedules, price, payment mechanism, etc., negotiations take place. In case of consumer selling, the scope of negotiation is very low. Moving on to the price and value of goods. In organizational selling, the price of goods and the total value of sales is higher. In case of consumer selling, the price of goods and the total value of sales is lower. Moving on to the closure of sales. In organizational selling, the sale is considered to be complete only after the payment is realized and the delivery is made. Hence, the sale closes long after the actual sale. In case of consumer selling, the delivery and payment happen simultaneously. Hence, the sale closes immediately. And finally, the mode of payment. Credit and carry schemes are followed in organizational selling. The credit facility is valid for 3 to 6 months depending on the deal. Whereas in case of consumer selling, cash and carry schemes are followed. Now looking at a few examples of companies in the organizational selling space, one of them is McLane. McLane is an American wholesale supply chain services company. The company dispenses grocery and non-food related items to convenience stores, drugstores, discount retailers, wholesale clubs, military bases, quick service restaurants, and casual dining restaurants all throughout the United States. Not only this, it is also a wholesale distributor of wine, distilled spirits, and beer in some of the US states. McLane is categorized into 3 segments. First, grocery distribution. The grocery distribution wing serves about 49,000 retail locations in US. Next, food service distribution, which caters to almost 36,500 chain restaurants. And finally, beverage distribution that services around 24,900 retail locations in Colorado and southeastern US. McLane is a fully owned appendage of Berkshire Hathaway since 2003. Some of the key customers. First, Walmart, which was a former parent company of McLane, is also McLane's largest client with approximately 25% of its total revenue in 2017. Other prominent customers include 7-Eleven and Yum Brands. Going forward, Sam's Club, Walgreens, Kangaroo Express, Circle K, 7-Eleven, ExxonMobil, Target Stores, Kmart, Hess, Family Dollar, all are customers of McLane. And as mentioned earlier, they're also into the restaurant space. Restaurant chains like Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut, all part of the Yum Brands, and former Young concepts like Long John Silver's are also supplied by McLane Food Service. Moving on to the other example of a company in the organizational selling space, and that is Alibaba.com, which operates online. It's a China-based company. The world's largest e-commerce B2B platform, Alibaba, was launched in the year 1999. It is the leading platform for global wholesale trade. Suppliers are connected with buyers across the globe on a single marketplace platform by this international business-to-business site. Suppliers on the site manufacture and sell products in bulk to buyers. The buyers are generally businesses that are looking for the inventory for their company. Alibaba.com brings together hundreds of millions of products in more than 40 different major categories. These categories include electronics, machinery, and apparel. Hundreds of thousands of messages are exchanged between the buyers and suppliers on the platform each day. The buyers of all these products are located in more than 190 countries and regions.
So that's it, folks. And then end to the topic on sales process. Do subscribe to our channel and witness such videos daily. Thank you and stay tuned for our videos.